Once again, here are the facts that the hate Trump media mob will never give you. We'll do their job for them.
Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion. Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed.
Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true. The Afghan military collapsed because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped, as well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. The Afghan military collapsed. Do I trust the Taliban? No. But I trust the capacity of the Afghan military, who is better trained, better equipped, and more competent in terms of conducting war. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight.
Back in July, you said a Taliban takeover was highly unlikely. Was the intelligence wrong, or did you downplay it?
I think there was no consensus. If you go back and look at the intelligence reports, they said that it was more likely to be sometime by the end of the year.
You didn't put a timeline out when you said it was highly unlikely. You just said flat out it's highly unlikely the Taliban would take over.
Yeah. Well, the question was whether or not the idea that the Taliban would take over was premised on the notion that somehow the 300,000 troops we had trained and equipped was going to just collapse. They were going to give up. I don't think anybody anticipated that.
Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Okay, Joe's lying, just like his friends in the media mob and, well, most liberal Democrats these days.
I remember when the Obama administration sought a deal with the Taliban. The Trump administration's now on the verge of signing one.
Which we know nothing about. Look, I opposed the surge in the first place, number one. I didn't think we should have even the troops we sent there. Now, it's all been made public now, that we should have the troops in the first place that were sent there.
Confidential documents published last week by the Washington Post revealed that for years, senior U.S. officials misled the public about the war in Afghanistan. As vice president, what did you know about the state of the war, and do you believe that you were honest with the American people about it?
I said there was no comprehensive policy available, and then I got in a big fight for a long time with the Pentagon because I strongly opposed the nation-building notion we set about.
And in that time, it seems to me that we have to bring some stability here by a multinational force that allows the government to be in a position to be able to exercise some authority. But we're just, this is pretty early in the process.
So he was for nation building. He wanted it.
Because I strongly opposed the nation-building notion we set about.
And in that time, it seems to me that we have to bring some stability here by a multinational force.
Another blatant lie from the ever-forgetful Joe Biden.
Rebuilding that country as a whole nation is beyond our capacity. I argued from the very beginning that we should have a policy that was based on an anti-terrorism policy with a very small footprint that in fact only had special forces to deal with potential threats from that territory to the United States of America. The first thing I would do as President of the United States of America is to make sure that we brought all combat troops home, entered into a negotiation with the Taliban, but I would leave behind special forces in small numbers to be able to deal with the potential threat unless we got a real good negotiation accomplished to deal with terrorism. That's been my position from the beginning. That's why I think Secretary Gates and some members of the Pentagon weren't happy with me.
Mr. Biden, the question was about your time in the White House, though. And
I'm talking about the White House.
In that Washington Post report, there's a senior national security official who said that there was constant pressure from the Obama White House to produce figures showing the troop surge was working, and I'm quoting from the report here, despite hard evidence to the contrary. What do you say to that?
Since 2009, go back and look. I was on the opposite side of that.
Did you lose the argument with the president? And is 30,000 a good number in your view?
My view all along has been less important what the number is than what the strategy is. And the president laid out the strategy in the following order. Our number one enemy and concern is the existential threat, al-Qaeda. Number two is the stability of a nuclear state called Afghanistan under siege by radicals. And number three, prevent the present government while it's gaining its sea legs from being able to be toppled or fundamentally altered by the Taliban. All three of those things are in place. The president's got the priorities right. The number of troops is much less important than that narrowed, clear strategy and the expectation that we expect both the Pakistanis to step up. We expect the Afghanis to, in fact, have better governance and train up better. And we are going to be relentless in our continued pursuit, which we are doing and are succeeding in, of going after al-Qaeda in Pakistan, where they are. I was on the opposite side of that with the Pentagon. The only reason I can speak to it now is because it's been published. It's been published thoroughly. I'm the guy from the beginning who argued that it was a big, big mistake to surge forces to Afghanistan. Period. We should not have done it. And I argued against it constantly.
The first real test of post 9/11 engagement is whether or not we're going to stay the course in Afghanistan. If Chairman Karzai is to govern effectively, the first thing he needs is security. The second is a plan which is underway to rebuild a military and a police force and an infusion of economic assistance just to do the basic things, like put in fax machines, telephones, desk, paper, the things that are the necessary tools of governance in the most basic of ways. History is going to judge us very harshly, I believe, if we allow the hope of a liberated Afghanistan to evaporate because we are fearful of the phrase nation building or we do not stay the course.
The Washington Post quoted you this week in a story about Afghanistan, saying that back in 2010, you said to Richard Holbrooke, the then envoy, "I'm not sending my boy back there to risk his life on behalf of women's rights. It just won't work. Not what we're there for." Is that how you remember it? Or
Yeah,
what did you mean?
What I meant was there's 1,000 places we could go to deal with injustice. I can think of 10 countries where women and or children and or people are being persecuted or being hurt. But the idea of us going to be able to use our armed forces to solve every single internal problem that exists throughout the world is not within our capacity. The question is America's vital self-interest at stake or the vital self-interest of one of our allies at stake? And the fact that they have a system in Afghanistan, as they do in parts of Pakistan, as they do in parts of other countries, that we're going to send troops to, because there is not, human rights are not being valued to the same degree that we are. That's a different story about sending combat troops. We should call it out. We should go to the United Nations. We should be saying, this is what's happening. We should try to shame and get the world to put pressure on, and economic pressure on people who engage, countries that engage in that, but not send troops. That's what I meant. It is not sufficient. That was my point. And the idea was, and I think Richard had said something like, well, women are being abused there. I said, they're being abused a lot of places around the world. Are we going to send our American forces all over the world to make sure that stops?
But then don't you bear some responsibility for the outcome if the Taliban ends up back in control and women end up losing the rights?
No, I don't. Look, are you telling me that we should go into China go to war with China because what they're doing to the Uyghurs, 1 million Uyghurs out in the West in concentration camps? Is that what you're saying to me?
It was your quote, sir. I was asking you.
No,
what you
I know.
meant.
I gave the answer. Do I bear responsibility? Zero responsibility.
What we have to make clear is that we, in fact, are not going to abide by what they've done. 1 million Uyghurs, as you pointed out, Muslims, are in concentration camps. That's what they are right now. They're being abused. They're in concentration camps. And what we started in our administration that Trump stopped, we should be moving 60% of our sea power to that area of the world to let, in fact, the Chinese understand that they're not going to go any further. We are going to be there to protect other folks.
Are you telling me that we should go into China go to war with China because what they're doing to the Uyghurs, 1 million Uyghurs out in the West in concentration camps? Is that what you're saying to me?
We should be moving 60% of our sea power to that area of the world. We have to be firm. We don't have to go to war, but we have to make it clear this is as far as you go, China.
Are you telling me that we should go into China go to war with China because what they're doing to the Uyghurs, 1 million Uyghurs?
We're not looking for a war, but we've got to make clear we are Pacific power and we are not going to back away.
And we want to make sure that our goals are clear and achievable, because I would respectfully suggest none of you nor us could say precisely what our goal is in Afghanistan. What is the goal?
Joe Biden is living an alternative reality.